All right. Aleena, this video here, I'm just going to kind of cover a few of the different tools. I'm not exactly sure what is happening with yours or what broke. I kind of have to see it on your end to kind of help you out with that. So I'll cover a few different things, and maybe, in the process of doing this, it'll kind of answer a few of the questions. But I know you mentioned the cut tool wasn't working. That was a big one. So we'll definitely focus on that. But what I've kind of got here is the project, and what I would recommend you do is immediately change your workspace to UV editing. So what this is going to do is give you kind of this dual setup. We have two panels, 3D viewport, the UV editor, and then on the right you should see a UV toolkit. It might be collapsed, so if you hit the little tab right there, it'll pop out. Now the videos I have up on YouTube, they're from the previous version of Maya. All the concepts are still the same. So the cut tool still works. I'm kind of wondering if what maybe happened is you were using this guy, which is the wrong one. They've kind of renamed some of these over the last few years, and this cut tool is not the same one you've probably used before. It should be this guy. So I'll kind of do a quick demo and maybe a couple things to do here. So let's just say we're starting with the scraper, for example. So you don't have to UV this guy or that particular pulley. You could bring in like a completely separate object, because I have them in the project file, like they're in an OBJ folder. So I'm going to import in and kind of back up, go to OBJ, we'll bring in the scraper. And there's a video that shows you how to transfer the UVs from this to the other one. Now the reason I'm kind of recommending maybe doing this guy is because if you try to UV this one, since it's at an angle, a lot of your mapping tools are going to break. Well, not necessarily break, but you probably remember how the planar maps have like X, Y, Z coordinates, and they want the object to be lined up with them. This is going to cause a few issues with a couple of these things. So I think to play it safe, we'll UV this one, and then later you can kind of watch the video on how to transfer the UVs from here to that. But when I bring it in, you'll notice that we have a mess. These are terrible. So I just want to hit like a giant reset button. And what I was doing in the video was just clicking on the model, going over here. We're going to do camera-based under the create section. That's going to reset the UVs, and you can tell it's creating a planar map from our active camera, like here in perspective. Now this is also made up of multiple objects. So what we want to do is click on the scraper, go to mesh, do a separate. And now we can see each individual piece. So if I move that up, move that guy down, we have bolts, this little metal piece in the back. I can start focusing on all these guys individually. So we'll do a couple of the easier ones first, and then I'll see if I have time to move into this guy. So the scraper, for example. This obviously looks like it should be a Y planar map, right? So I could immediately jump in there and do a planar map. So if I hold shift and left click, that's going to bring up the options. I'll reset everything. So if you haven't modified any of these, we can go to Y. This is probably unchecked, but watch what happens if I do a Y planar map with that off. See how it stretches it quite a bit? You can tell it's not a good look compared to what's happening in 3D. So if you keep this on and do the planar map, that makes sure that the sort of dimensions or the scale of that UV shell is going to be much more accurate to what you're seeing in 3D. So I usually prefer to have that on. Now when you do that, it's a pretty good starting point, but with that little shaded button up here, you've probably seen this before, where you kind of get this weird purple color, which means we have overlapping UVs. I have the top and the bottom both sitting on top of each other. Oh, and by the way, the checker, just in case you didn't find that, is right here. You'll also notice that it does appear in the UV editor, so if you're going to use the checker pattern, I would turn this button off so you don't see it in here, because it's kind of obnoxious. But after that, we got the Y planar map. I need to split the top and the bottom apart so they don't overlap. So what I'm going to do is come here to the bottom, and I don't think it really matters which edge you're going to pick, but any of these edges right here, just double click. It's going to run a loop around the whole surface. And to do a cut, there's a few ways to do it. I'll try the one I think you're doing. Down here, hit this button on the edges, not UV components. It has to be edges that you're cutting. So I'm going to cut it. You'll notice that edge turned to like a bold line. So the way to verify this worked is if I now go to UV shell and select, There they are. They broke apart. So you have to have the edge component selected. They have to be a complete loop. If you even miss one edge, like if for some reason later on, you're doing the handle, if you thought you ran an edge loop, but there's one edge you didn't do, like I'll sew it back together. See how it's still connected? So even with one component not being cut, if I go to shell, it thinks they're both connected still because it's running through that one section. But again, as soon as I cut it, it works. Let me just undo that right there. Okay. Now from here, I could then go to shell. It's red. We know that's backwards. So under this transform section, there's an area down here called flip. I want to have it set to U, which is horizontal flip. Hit the button. Done. Now the only thing that's really wrong with the blade at this point, which is kind of hard to see, is if you look at the side right there. Watch what happens when I move this guy side to side. Look at the checker as it goes down the side. See that popping where it's not really showing me the kind of the texture moving on the side? It just kind of erratically jumps around. That is a stretching issue, and you can really see it if you scale it up a lot to make the checkers smaller. I'm gonna fix this in a second, but yeah, see how that clearly looks like it's stretching, and these are all fine on the top. So to fix this thing, we can simply do an unfold. So what I'm going to do is click on that shell. Let's look for the unfold tool down here under unfold. Here's unfold. Now if you're going to use it, shift left click, make sure you have unfold 3D turned on. If you don't see unfold 3D at all, you need to go into your plugin manager, look for the unfold 3D and turn it on, because some students don't have it enabled for some reason. But we'll hit apply, and you'll notice it does kind of distort and kind of bend it a little bit, but that really is so minor it's not going to matter. The important thing is that it's popping out the border. That's the side. So now we don't have any stretching on the side of the blade. So these guys are done. So I'm just going to take both, move them aside. Now let's try this again with the handle. This one's obviously a lot more complicated. So we're going to click on it. Okay, here's my camera planar map from earlier. Now this one, there's a few ways to do it. What I would maybe recommend is kind of visualizing the different pieces. I think this is maybe what you were trying to do in one of the videos, is sort of thinking about where you want to cut it and then hopefully moving that shell apart. So if I know that the top is flat, I want to do a wide planar map, just like we did on the blade, I need to first cut my edges to separate that shell. So we're going to go to edge, double click, hold shift, double click there, come over here, double click. Oh, let me turn the shading off too. There we go. And come to the front. I just want to look at what the edge loops we're doing. Okay, it doesn't really matter which one we pick. I'm going to maybe choose this one. Now you'll notice that when I am kind of holding shift and doing this little double click for the edge loop, see how it's also running off into these areas? We don't want that because I just want to get a nice clean border. So I'm going to hold Control, deselect. Come to the other side, the same issue. Okay, Control, deselect. And now let's try doing the cut. So over here under cut and sew, simply hit the button. Again, we're cutting the edges, not the UVs, and you'll notice that is now a bold edge. And you probably should see it turns bold because right there's that button. Just have that turned on. That'll highlight the cut edges. Now, one other thing as well is if I kind of try to do the UV shell, you'll notice that the whole thing's lighting up because this is still connected through here. So to really get this top to break apart, I also need to go here, find a middle edge, double click, and we'll do cut again. Okay, and now that should be, yep, there's the little border, that worked. Let's go to shell, and look what happened. Okay, so now we've got this guy right here. Oh, that's my GoToMeeting for later. Okay, so I've got this top part all set up. Now obviously it doesn't look good. Now we could do a Y planar map, right? Because we know it's pointing up in Y, but the unfold tool is really good in this new version of Maya. And so for a lot of these things, you don't really need to go in there and like manually map out each part. Sometimes the unfold tool just works. So if I go under here and find it, let's see what unfold does for the top. Perfect. That looks great to me. So this is already done. And I can, put it upright, scaled up a little bit, leave that to the side. We're done. Let's do this again a little faster on the bottom. So this is going to be the same thing. And feel free to move these guys around. You don't need to keep them all together. So if it's easier for me to kind of get in there, I can kind of move this up. That way I'm not getting my camera all smashed together with the other small pieces that make up the scraper. So a little faster this time. Double click through all these guys. I'm going to double click on that middle edge loop right, if I can get it. There we go. And let's come to the front and just do our little cleanup here. Okay, we'll do that guy. And same thing, I can see my edge loops kind of ran off into a few areas I don't want. So we're going to do Control, deselect. Come over here, Control, deselect. And let's cut it. So under here, cut. And it should be just like the other one, where now that is its own piece. Okay, there it is. You can see in the process, now we have this little guy. It's also been separated. So that'd be an easy one to lay out. There's a cylinder right there. So this time we'll do the same thing. We'll just go in here, find unfold. Wonderful. I know it's a different scale, not a big deal. We can fix that ourselves, but let's just turn that, and we'll kind of keep this guy somewhere around there. We're not going to worry about connecting things together quite yet. All right, so top and bottom are good. Let's do the side, and this one's a little more involved, and I'm going to do a couple things slightly different. So there's nothing really wrong with you going into the menus and like hitting the cut, hitting unfold. I think it's probably the best way people learn. But once you get a little bit better at this, you do want to eventually move into these guys. So I don't know how much you've really been using these menus. They maybe have popped up in some of your modeling classes. So what these are is when you're holding down either Shift or Command, and when you right click, see how they're bringing up different options? And depending on what you're selecting, like if I have an edge selected, that will also do different things with Shift right click, Command right click. If I'm over here, it's different things. Shift right click, Command right click. If I'm in object mode, it's also different. Shift right click, Command. So that'll take some practice, but the reason I'm kind of showing you that is because it's going to make your UV process a little faster, because you don't have to constantly be opening up menus. You'll just know what to do through the menu here and get to the tool a lot faster. So I'll kind of try that on this one. So what I'm going to do is go to Edge. We're going to draw basically a border around this whole side so I can do a different map on it. So you'll notice that when I do this, the loop is running through the wrong area. So let's do this part in sections. We're going to click here, go to this guy, Shift double click, and I'm going to cut as I go around it. Okay, so instead of me going into the cut menu, I'm going to Shift right click in the UV editor, cut. And let's keep doing that. Okay, here to there, cut. Now let's go and do this part. Here to there. And there's even a faster way, because when you're doing the same command over and over again, I don't even have to do this Shift right click. I could also just hit G. G is repeat the last command. So when you're doing something that has a lot of repetition, like, I mean, kind of like what we're doing right now, that is super, super handy. So I'm going to zoom in here. Let's try this again. We're going to walk through this area. I already have like the bottom cut. So G, click there, double click, hit G, and then I'm going to guide this part around the outside right there. And then we're kind of just walking up the corner. Whoop, not that one. Back up. Okay, this one's doing a little weird thing, so let me try this again. There we go. G. And eventually what's going to happen is that it's going to kind of meet up at the same corner that we were using earlier for that top part. Okay, so I'm pretty sure I did it right, but let's find out. Shell, there we go. That did separate. And again, let's try the unfold, but let's do it through the menus. So Shift right click, unfold, unfold, done. Okay, and now let's try this again for the other side. We'll do it again. So it's just repetition and doing it over and over again. Okay, I'm going to walk this down and then cut. And once I do the cut tool once, I can start using the G key to just do repeat command. So just bear with me here. This is the boring part. Not that UVs aren't exciting. Exciting for some of us. I enjoy it. I think it's just frustrating when you're doing this stuff and it feels like the tools aren't cooperating, because the unfold tool is notorious for not working. But hopefully this will kind of clear up a lot of those problems you're running into, and you're going to be able to knock this out pretty quick. All right, so I just cut all that stuff. Shell, yep, it worked. Same thing. Unfold, bam. So I've kind of got all my pieces in place right now, and you probably know just by looking at this that all these could be connected together in one chunk. I don't need to leave them separate. There's really no point to that. So let's try moving and sewing. All right, so to move and sew and connect them, if I find a border, and you can kind of see how that's lighting up over here. If I click here, shift, double click to draw a loop, under cut and sew, this is sew is going to connect them together without moving. Stitch together is going to move them together and sew it. This used to be called move and sew, I think, in like the previous version, so you might remember that. But if I do it, let's see what happens. Looks pretty good, right? And you can see it's also scaled it up to make that connection. Now, sometimes when you do stitch together, it will not scale, and it's going to look very weird because you're going to see a small little thing like this kind of connecting to that. Okay. Oh, I'm getting all sorts of calls. Declined. All right. So let's do this again. This time I'm not going to use this. We're going to try the shift right click. Okay, and it should be here, move and sew. Okay, so look at this. This is the move and sew, and you can see this is an updated version. If you shift command and pick this one, this will move them together without scaling it, but look at the bottom, stitch together. And there it goes. So that works, and it'll scale it up. They must have added that in the new version. Okay, so we're going to go up here. Let's just repeat that again. I'll use G. It should work, or not. That's fine. Stitch together. And we'll do it again here. Okay, and stitch together. Okay, that one did not work. Let me see if it's backwards. Nope, it's facing the right way. Let me try move and sew. Stitch together. Good job, Maya. For no reason, this one has not worked. So what I could do for this case, because I don't know why it didn't scale, I'm going to double click, move this over, and then rotate that, and we're going to try to line it up on the edge right here. Okay, and let's bring it up. So what I'm doing is basically getting it to the point where it looks like it would connect without any work. So even if that move and sew or the stitch together thing fails, I'm ensuring that the two pieces are so damn close to each other that it's going to be a perfect fit anyway, even if it doesn't scale it. So let's try it out. Those look really good. Double click, stitch together. Awesome. Looks great. And I would kind of continue doing this. You know, I think the back parts here, this part, that could be mapped separately. Those would connect from the top. You can come over here and do like, I'll show an example of like a planar map. Like here's me connecting one of the front parts. So I'm going to run a loop from here all the way to the other corner. Right there. Okay, so we're going to do cut, and that's somewhere over here. There it is. Okay, here's this little guy. And let's do shift right click, unfold it. Looks good. And now we're going to move this over and just see if that's going to connect. It should connect pretty easy. So let me find out where this is at. So that's going to be those edges. I'm kind of looking at what I can connect together. I bet I can get a lot. I think I can get almost this whole section right here to connect. Yeah, maybe even a little farther. That might work. Let's try it out. I'm going to just do a test here. I'm going to go from here to there. and then shift right click, stitch together. Okay, it actually looks okay, and the part I wasn't sure about is if I think this is going to work. It's a little bit of a gap, but I bet it's going to look okay. So let's do stitch together. Okay. Now you can tell there is probably a little stretching. Maybe UVs are overlapping because it's a little bunched up in some areas. This is where unfold might help us out. So let me try and unfold on the whole thing. So I'm just going to grab everything and see what unfold does. Before, after. Let me kind of look at this one section. Yeah, that like is not really that big of a difference. So I don't think it was a huge issue either way before, but I could turn on the checker and maybe look at what's happening here. I think it does look a little better like that. Okay, let's kind of come up, and I think it also fixed some weird overlap I had in this one section. So I'd say the unfold looks pretty good. And I could like connect the other part, unfold it. You can unfold in sections. You don't have to do the full shell. You could do a piece, unfold it, see if it looks good. You can come over here, connect the back parts to it, just unfold the back, you know, see if those look better with just the back unfolded. But eventually the whole handle will, for the most part, be put together. You might have a couple random pieces like on the inside and the back, but we've kind of knocked out like a good chunk of the scraper pretty quickly. And at the end of the day, you're just combining the stuff together into your final layout. And I do have a couple examples of what mine turned out like. This does not mean you have to match mine. We've had plenty of other types of UV layouts that are just equally as good, but these are what I ended up creating. So if you are stuck, you can at least use this as a little bit of a guide, you know, just to kind of nudge you in the right direction. We don't have time to do the pulley because I have to start my GoToMeeting, but hopefully this answers some of the questions. I think your problem was with this guy, but let me know if this worked. I'm going to post this to my YouTube channel here in a little bit, and I'll send you the link in an email.